Hi friends, we are going to talk about this week in science. We're still talking about states of matter, and we are going to dive a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about condensation and evaporation. We're going to learn what those two vocabulary words are and how both of them happen using water. So I'm going to share my screen with you guys. We are going to go into a PowerPoint here that I have made for y'all called Changes in Matter. And what we're going to do, we always start off, I'm going to read you guys the TEK first. Remember, the TEK is what the state tells us exactly what to teach and how to teach it. So this is TEK 3.5C. The student is expected to predict, observe, and record changes in the state of matter caused by heating or cooling, such as ice becoming liquid water, condensation forming on the outside of a glass of ice water, or liquid water being heated to the point of becoming water vapor. So we're talking about liquid water. That means like condensation, how the water gets on the outside of our glasses, our drinking glasses sometimes, and then also how water can be heated so much that it becomes water vapor, and we do not see it. It goes into the air. Matter can change states through heating or cooling. When water heats up, the space between the water particles becomes greater. And when water cools down, the space between the water particles becomes less. When liquid water cools to 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, this that we see right here, this C, this is Celsius, and this F right here, this is Fahrenheit. And a lot of times here in the US, we always refer to things in Fahrenheit. So when water cools to this degree, it freezes or changes from a liquid to a solid. It changes to ice, which is just, ice is nothing but a solid water. When ice is heated, it melts, or it changes from a solid to a liquid. And ice melts at 0 degrees Celsius and 32 degrees Fahrenheit as well. You can see water as a liquid and a solid. You cannot see water as a gas. Water as a gas is called water vapor. And when water is heated to 100 degrees Celsius, it boils or changes from liquid water into bubbles of water vapor. Water vapor and steam are not the same. Steam is droplets of liquid water in the air. So let's talk about that for a second. So when you see somebody cooking at home and they have a pot on the stove, and sometimes you may think it looks like smoke that's coming out of there, that is actually the steam that's coming out. Now, steam is a little bit different. Once that steam goes into the air, it turns into water vapor. But when we can still see it with our eyes, that right there, that process is the steam. When water boils, it evaporates. Evaporation is the change from liquid water to water vapor. Evaporation can also happen slowly at a water's surface. So here's exactly what I was just talking about. So we have this pot of water boiling on the stove. We can see the steam right here, the steam that comes up from the boiling water. But once it comes into the air and we can't see it anymore, that is evaporation. That is where it goes into water vapor. So just notice the water droplets on the outside of this glass. Where does that water come from? When water vapor in the air cools, it can change back into a liquid. And the water vapor condenses, okay? So this is all talking about condensation. Condensation is the change from a gas to a liquid. So now here we have a glass of ice water. So sometimes when you were little, you might have thought that this water on the outside of your glass came from the inside. Maybe thought it was leaking through. How could water from the inside of the glass get to the outside? It has nothing to do with what's inside the glass, okay? This could have been a glass of tea, Dr. Pepper, anything. and it's still going to create these water droplets on the outside of the glass. And these water droplets right here on the outside of the glass is called condensation. Okay, it's when that water vapor gets very, very cool around it. So you have a glass of, you've got ice water, right? So then around the glass, that air starts cooling off, and it changes, that water vapor changes back into a liquid, and it appears and shows itself as condensation. We are going to watch a little video about how water can change. So I'm going to do that one right now. Let me bring up our video. Sit back and enjoy this. This is a very, very neat video about water changing, evaporation, condensation.
Smile and learn.
Oof, it's so hot. Hey there, I'm making some strawberry popsicles. It's steaming hot today, and I really wanted to have one. But for them to stay solid, I'd have to put them in the freezer like these ones and wait for a while. Really? You don't know what a solid is? It's one of the states of matter. Don't worry, I'll tell you all about them right away. Matter, the substance all things are made of, exists in 3 states: liquid, like this strawberry juice, solid, like this popsicle, and gas, like the water vapor coming out of this pot. Everything we drink is in its liquid state. Matter, in its liquid state, takes on the shape of the container, and its volume always stays the same. Particles are separated and can move freely. Can you see how they're moving? They look like they're dancing. The popsicles we eat are solid. Matter in its solid state is characterized by having a fixed shape and volume. Particles are held together in an organized structure. See? Lastly, the gaseous state. The vapor coming out of the pot is a gas. Matter in its gaseous state can change its volume and shape, taking up the space of its container. See? Particles are well separated and can move freely. Look, they move like crazy. Did you get the idea? Let's recap a little. Matter exists in 3 states: solid, liquid, and gas. Solid matter has a definite shape and volume. Particles are well organized and held closely together. Liquid matter takes on the shape of its container, occupying always the same space. Besides, particles are separated and can move freely. Gas matter doesn't have a fixed shape or volume. Its particles are well separated and can move freely. That is all about states of matter. Very interesting, isn't it? Well, I'm leaving now. I won't sell any popsicles if I don't. See you around.
That's it. Perfect. They'll be ready in no time. Hey there, I'm making some more popsicles to sell. They taste so good. I'm sure they'll sell really fast. These are ready. See? They've become solid because I put them in the freezer. Have you ever heard of the word solidification? It's one of the changes in states of matter. There are more changes, don't worry. I'll explain all about them. You already know that matter exists in 3 states: solid, liquid, and gas. A change in state happens when we heat or cool matter. If we heat solid matter, it becomes a liquid. We call this process fusion. If we heat liquid matter, it becomes a gas. We call this process vaporization. These 2 processes can occur the other way around. This happens when we cool matter instead of applying heat. If we cool a gas, it becomes a liquid. This process is called condensation. If we freeze liquid matter, it will become a solid. This process is called solidification. Oh no, the popsicles have melted. I completely forgot about them. Do you remember how we call the change from solid to liquid? Fusion. When a solid becomes a liquid, it's called fusion. When the temperature of a solid rises, the particles that make up matter start detaching from one another and move more freely. See? Liquid turns into gas when heated. Do you remember how we call this process? When a liquid becomes gas, it's called vaporization. When a liquid is heated, the bonds among the particles that make up matter become more loose, so particles move around freely. What if I cover this pot? What do you think might happen? Water vapor cools as it reaches the lid, and its state changes from gaseous to liquid. Do you remember how we call this process? I've just told you, haven't I? The change from gaseous to liquid is called condensation. As a gas cools, the particles that make up matter start coming closer to one another and move around more slowly. This will continue to happen till matter solidifies completely. I think the popsicles I froze up earlier are just about ready. That's right, I put some popsicle molds in the freezer a while ago. The liquid in the molds must have frozen up by now. The change from liquid to solid is called... Come on, you know this. I told you before. It's called solidification. During the solidification process, the particles that make up matter lay very close to one another and move less and less. These are the changes in the states of matter. Let's recap. If we heat solid matter, it becomes a liquid. We call this process fusion. If we heat liquid matter, it becomes a gas. We call this process vaporization. These two processes can occur the other way around. That happens when we cool matter instead of applying heat. If we cool a gas, it becomes a liquid. This process is called condensation. If we freeze liquid matter, it will become a solid. This process is called solidification. Now you know all about the changes in states of matter. I hope you find what you've learned useful in class. I have to go. Look at all those people lining up for popsicles. See you around. Did you like the video?
All right. Let me get out of here and go back into our PowerPoint. All right. So it is very interesting when you're looking at it and you realize that anytime something cools, we've been talking about particles with states of matter and how just solids, liquids, and gases, how those particles are. But particles move depending on if it's heated or cooled. And it's so neat to know that if anything gets cool, that those particles come closer together. And when things are heated, those particles get further apart. So you have to think it kind of makes sense when we're talking about evaporation, right? Something is heating, and when those particles get hot, they start to expand and move. Think about gas. So evaporation is just the state of a liquid turning to a gas, okay? And when we talk about gas last week, we talked about how when it's in particles are in gas, we talked about how they're free and they're bouncing around, okay? So when water heats up and it turns to a gas, of course, those particles are going to expand. It fits more into our definition of particles in a gas. And when water cools, then it comes closer together. So let's go back. We're going to do a quick little review. And let me get back into our PowerPoint. And let's take a look and see what you learned, okay? All right, we're gonna review. Remember, if we click on it and we hear a chime, it means we got the answer right. If we click on it and we get it wrong, we're gonna hear an explosion. Okay, when liquid water cools to 0 degrees Celsius or 32 degrees Fahrenheit, it turns from a liquid to a solid. So we have water, we have a liquid, and then something happens and it creates a solid. what happens here? Freezing, melting, condensation, evaporation. A liquid has to become a solid, and it happens at 32 degrees Fahrenheit. What happens to that liquid? Guess what, guys? It freezes. It freezes. When a liquid becomes a gas, this gas is called, a liquid is becoming a gas, okay? Think about that liquid in a pot and it gets heated up. When it becomes a gas, what is it called? I don't think it's called freezing to become a gas. I don't think melting makes sense. If it's becoming a gas, do we think it could be condensation or evaporation? What do you think? Evaporation is the answer. If you guessed that, good job. When gas changes back to a liquid, this is called, okay, so we have gas, we have water vapor in the air, okay? It's still up there. Even though we can't see it, it is a vapor in the air, it's a gas. And now it's going to change back to a liquid. What would this be called? Freezing, melting, condensation, or evaporation? Condensation. When a gas turns back to a liquid, it's condensation. Think about the glass of ice water. The ice water has that air around it. It becomes cooler, okay? Those particles start to come closer together, and that water vapor around that glass turns into a liquid, and that's when we see the water on the outside of the glass. That is what's formed, is the condensation. When water changes from a solid to a liquid, this is caused by what makes a solid change to a liquid? Like in the video, she was doing popsicles, okay? So if I had a popsicle, which is a solid, what would make it turn into a liquid? Freezing, melting, condensation, or evaporation. What would change my popsicle to a liquid? I hope you said melting. That was an easy one, easy one. Good job, y'all. All right, let's get our brains thinking just a little bit. A puddle forms on a sidewalk. The temperature overnight falls below 0 degrees Celsius, 30 degrees Fahrenheit, okay? It falls below. And the next day is sunny and the temperature rises above freezing. Tell how the puddle changes. Let's see if we can use the words freeze, melt, and evaporate. If you need time to think about this question on your own, you can hit the pause button right now on this video. A puddle's on a sidewalk. That means there's a little puddle, there's a rain puddle. And it says the temperature overnight falls below 32 degrees. So it falls below freezing. Let's take that first part. If a puddle of water falls below the freezing temperature, what is going to happen to that liquid? It's going to freeze. It's going to turn to a solid, okay? But then the next day is sunny and the temperature rises above freezing. So that tells us it is above 32 degrees. Now, what happens to that puddle? Now, that puddle is going to turn from being a solid to a liquid. So now that puddle no longer is a solid. It's above freezing, the sun is out, so it's going to start to melt. And depending on how hot it gets throughout the day, that water may even evaporate. So it means that water puddle is going to get so hot that it turns into a gas and it makes itself into water vapor. All right, tell 3 things about solids, liquids, and gases, okay? Here is where you can do this on your own, and you can tell me 3 facts about a solid, 3 facts about liquid, and 3 facts about gases. You can pause the video here to complete this. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining today, talking about condensation and evaporation. It is just an exciting way to learn how water works, isn't it? So I'm so glad you guys came today to learn, and I cannot wait to go over our lab for the week, condensation and evaporation. Thanks for being here. See you later, guys. Bye.